Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the special Ramadan edition of the Oasis Focus and Finance Show. I'm your host Shafiq Morten. Today we have a look at the question of financial independence. What does it take? And we have a look at the whole empowerment and education process. Obviously the win-win situation for us all is where our income exceeds all of our expenses. But to help us through this today are Hassan Motala and Mansoor. Gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show. Hassan, let's start off with you. Why is it so important to educate ourselves? I mean, education here is in block letters.
I think, Shafiq, we're in this, alhamdulillah, we're in the beautiful month of Ramadan. What is so important of Ramadan is referred to as, many people, it's referred to as what? The month of the Holy Quran. Now, when we think about back, when the Holy Quran was first, when Allah first revealed the first verse to us, what did He tell mankind with the first verse? He told us, Iqra. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of thy Lord. That's what He told us. Read in the name of thy Lord. That was the first verse He told us, and He instructed us. He told us that we should actually strive and seek knowledge. Seek education, seek knowledge. And that was the first verse He revealed to mankind and revealed to us. It's very important. Now, seeking knowledge means, seeking knowledge, various types of knowledge we need to seek. Be it secular knowledge, be it Islamic knowledge, whatever it may be. That's important. But I think what we need to understand is that, are we practicing what Allah has told us? And what the Almighty has told us around this? And we look at it, for example, do we strive for excellence in everything that we do in life? Do we really strive and do our best and give it our utmost in terms of what we want to do? In any spheres what we get into. Has the Muslim world, have we produced an abundance of intellectuals and the like in the last number of years? Have we basically in the last number of 20th, 21st centuries, have we been innovators in terms of be it technology, communications, the arts, whatever it may be? Have we been at the forefront of that? Unfortunately, not really. Oh no. Now, if we go back to our not too distant past, the Muslim world was full of intellectuals and great thinkers. If I refer to, for example, you go back to history where we talk about one of the great thinkers and philosophers of our time, Ibn Khaldun. He was an African, born in Tunis, but most of his life obviously lived in Egypt. He was referred to as the father of the science of history. A great thinker, a great philosopher. But not only intellectuals, what about mathematics? Think about today. Everything we do in life in terms of, be it from technology and the like, revolves around maths, revolves around science. Very, very key and important aspects in terms of what drives innovation, what drives technology today. And think about, firstly, the basics of mathematics. What came out? The concept of zero, algebra. Those concepts were actually founded by who? Muslims. And if you think about one of the great mathematicians of his time, it was Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. And when we talk about algebra, where did the word algebra come from? It actually came from his book, Kitab al-Jibr.
Algorithms as well.
Algorithms as well. Exactly. So if you look at it, mathematics, we had great mathematicians that came up with concepts which the world is using today and has developed upon. And importantly, it's made a massive and important impact in terms of mankind. And that's an important aspect. So not only intellectuals or philosophers we were great in terms of mathematics and sciences, but also we were great designers and builders. During this period, as we're getting into the Northern Hemisphere summer, many people from South Africa and in fact all over the world are visiting one country in particular in more recent years, Turkey. Turkey has seen an increase in tourism over the last number of years, and particularly obviously Istanbul because of the great architecture that you see there, but also across the different cities across Turkey as well. But when you go into Turkey, when you talk about architecture, just in Istanbul itself, you go to the beautiful mosques, be it the Blue Mosque, the Sulaimaniya Mosque. There's such beautiful architecture that you can admire. Who was responsible for that? There was great Muslim architects that had designed it, had built that many years ago. And those things stand, those architects and monuments stand the test of time and are therefore for us to actually reflect upon what greatness. And one of the great architects of his time was Mimar Sinan, responsible for many of those beautiful buildings that were built as well. So I think importantly, education and high quality education is so important because it helps us set the base and then develop upon that base so that we can build upon it and make an important impact in terms of mankind, but very importantly, empower ourselves. And that is what we're going to lead upon in terms of firstly empowering ourselves, educating, empowering ourselves, and then leading to financial empowerment and financial independence.
Now, Hassan, you've spoke very eloquently about excellence and knowledge in the pursuit of wealth in its very true sense. And you started talking about empowerment. Tell us more about that.
When we talk about, as I highlighted, education gives you that base. It's basic, and you've got to build upon education. Continue to educate yourself and improve on yourself. Seek knowledge, read, continue. From that, it leads to empowerment. So if you understand a lot more about, firstly, educating yourself, but understanding about your affairs. How do you understand your financial affairs, your daily life? What is my income? What is my expenses? Then you'll be able to build on that and lead towards wealth creation. So when you're empowering yourself and educating yourself, you basically either move into a good career. From your career, you earn relatively good amount of income. From that, you can understand, okay, how do I manage that income? You have your expenses and the like, be it your, school expenses for your kids, your electricity costs, your housing costs. How do you manage all of those things? We're going to go through, Mansoor and I will go through the different aspects. So the one is firstly, empowering yourself with knowledge, which we talked about, and basically how to manage your financial affairs. Very important. Then secondly, how do you ensure that you're living within your means? So you have this pool of income that you're earning. Are you spending a lot more than that? Because one key aspect which we want to avoid is spending a lot more than what we earn and then getting ourselves indebted. Because one key aspect, and Islam tells us, avoid debt and avoid excessive debt. And debt, if you get over indebted and you continue to be entrapped, and therefore to get out of it tends to be very difficult. Mm-hmm. Then obviously, while you're empowering yourself, it's always important to utilize highly skilled professionals. I may be very good in a certain area. You may be very good in a certain area. But for example, you may not understand fully all the aspects around financial matters. There's only issues around taxation. There's issues around those type of matters. Speak to an expert. Speak to somebody who's qualified and can help you empower yourself. They will give you good, reliable advice. Therefore, speaking to qualified, skilled people in that particular area to help you financially empower yourself. And then lastly, to make sure that, with your wealth, you want to make sure that where you're placing your wealth and entrusting your wealth with, are you entrusting your wealth to somebody who you can rely upon? Are you entrusting it to an investment manager who has a track record and the skills to make sure that your hard-earned wealth, which you're working so hard for, and looking to build and create wealth for you and your family, is that being well looked after by somebody who's got the necessary skills and the track record to address that. So, and inshallah, hopefully during the course of this, we'll try and address those key points as well.
Now, Mansoor, this leads onto another issue. We've got the foundation in place now, but obviously there has to be what I think we call a mindset or an attitude towards financial independence. Just explain to us more about that.
Everything in life starts with attitude. You know the saying, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. So one needs to believe that it's doable before you can even begin this financial journey, Shafiq. Many people say that they're struggling to make ends meet. How can they afford to save? One needs to change the attitude, the mindset, and even your lifestyle for that matter, if you want to turn things around in your life. There are many ways of doing this. One of the most important aspects would be identifying and separating your needs from your wants. What is a necessity and what is a nice to have. Like, do I really need the new Ultra HD curved 60-inch television, or can I use that funds to actually pay some debt off? Does my son really need to get the i7 because his 5 friends got the i7, or is the i5 that he have sufficient and does the same job? On the other point of mindset change, I mean, if we take the average man in the street and says he can't afford to save 500 Rand on a monthly basis, but yet on every other Friday or Saturday he's probably spending in excess of 500 on family takeout. He needs to change his mindset. Look at that 500 Rand not as a savings or as an investment, but think of it as an expense. Something that he has to pay, water and electricity, rates, his telephone, his cell phone bill at the end of the month. If he does that, after a period of 3 months, it literally becomes a non-event. And what he finds is he's actually saving in a disciplined manner. Another point to touch would be your attitude towards debt. A good place to start with debt, Shafiq, is to actually list all of your debt down on a piece of page. Because I think the most fearful impact of debt is not knowing how much you actually owe. Once you've jotted or listed all of this debt on a piece of page, you actually know how much you owe and who you owe that money to. Shafiq, by jotting this down, you also console yourself with the knowledge that this is the worst your debt's ever going to be. And from this day onwards, you're going to work at becoming debt-free. So stay strong and plug away at that debt.
Yeah, Hassan, let's go to you first. Let's have a look at some more of the fundamentals that we have to be aware of on our road to financial freedom. I hear the word inflation cropping up and other dynamics.
Shafiq, as you highlight, is one of the key aspects in terms of impact on individuals' lives is inflation. What is inflation? You know, we always see this word being bandied around. You know, people see this terminology, sometimes SACPI that's reported in the media. What is that?
It's not a balloon.
Not a balloon, definitely not a balloon. So it's basically, so in South Africa, normally the measure of inflation is SACPI, or South African Consumer Price Index, and the change in that over a period of time. So essentially speaking, in terms of inflation, what do we mean by it? Is basically, it's the increase in the general price level of goods and services. That's essentially that. So today, if I'm paying 100 Rand for this tie, in a year's time, am I going to pay 110 rands, 120 rands? It could be 120 rands. That means the price of this tie, which is as good, has gone up now by 20%. Now, for the ordinary household there, you know, one of the key aspects is obviously our food basket. When we think about it, you know, every month, and especially in Ramadan, you know, there's always the preparation, the housewives on the go, and, you know, go before the month of Ramadan, get the freezers stocked up a bit with the samosas and all of those delicious savories that we have in the month, or the dates and the milk that we have during, you know, when we're making iftar as well. Now, for example, take Ramadan. You know, before this Ramadan, we know, okay, we're going to spend 100 rands. Basically, it's probably going to be a lot more than that, but just assume 100 Rand we're buying a basket of goods for this week of Ramadan, the first week of Ramadan. So that means we'll buy our milk, we'll buy our khajur or dates, we'll buy, you know, a few samosas, savories and the like for this week for our iftar. Now, 100 Rands will buy you this certain basket of goods. Now, come 5 years down the line, 5 Ramadans down the line, what will the impact be in terms of that 100 Rand that we bought for the first few days or first week of Ramadan in terms of iftar and the like? How much will that go 5 years down the line? How far will it go? I can tell you, it'll be a lot less. It'll be less because of the impact of inflation. Now in South Africa, if you look at inflation, what the average has been over the last number of years, it's generally been around 6% per annum. And that's the expectations or forecasts are around 6% per annum over the next. So assuming 6% per annum over the next 5 years, that 100 Rand today, in 5 years' time, the value, if you look at it in terms of what the real value of that 100 Rand, is essentially around 78, 79 Rands.
So your purchasing power is actually reduced.
Exactly. So instead of like today you're buying 100 Rand worth of goods, it's effectively the equivalent of buying now 79 Rand worth of goods today. That 100 Rand in 5 years' time. So your purchasing power reduces over time because of inflation. Now, we need to make sure that we're protecting against inflation over time. So that means you need to make sure that you're investing in the right assets to protect against inflation over a period of time. So inflation is essentially one of the key and most important risks that an individual or investor face out there. The second point which we have to factor in is a concept called volatility. Now, obviously volatility is, upward or downward movements. Now, for example, in financial markets, you're investing in equities or unit trusts or property. There will be times when markets will rise, and there will be time when those instruments will also come up. So that is the volatility in terms of how volatile are those movements within the share price movements over a period of time. Yes, in the shorter term, you will find that volatility is a risk, and we need to be cognizant of it. But over time, volatility risk tends to reduce over time, whereas inflation risk tends to pick up over time. Therefore, it's important to make sure that we're investing in our portfolio of assets, that we make sure that we have assets such as equity and property, because those assets have shown over many years, and inshallah in the future, that they tend to be, and they provide that protection against inflation over the long term.
So they're delivering inflation beating returns.
Over the long term, exactly.
Mansoor, let's get to you. We've got the issue of inflation and other things, but what other fundamentals do we have to consider apart from inflation?
Shafiq, I think another important fundamental to cover is the compounding effect. Investors that invest for the long term would often experience much greater wealth creation over time. So if you start saving early enough and take a long-term view, this allows investors to actually benefit from the compounding effect. The compounding of returns was once stated to be the eighth wonder of the world. Maybe to illustrate the compounding effect, I'll use an example. So let's take an individual, age 40. He's got 100,000 Rand that he can invest, and he receives a return of roughly 10% per annum. By age 65, his 100,000 Rand would be worth 1,080,000 Rand. The returns is quite substantial, but if we compare that to somebody age 30, saving that same 100,000 Rand, getting the same 10% return per annum, at age 65, his 100,000 is worth 2,810,000, which is almost 1.7 million Rand more than the individual that started saving at age 40. And this highlights the importance of starting to save early, as well as benefiting from the compound effect of investing over long periods of time, Shafiq.
Mansoor, Hassan mentioned the importance of placing skills in the right places. So how important in the context of our discussion is your old-fashioned financial advisor?
Both financial advisors and a financial planner equally have an important role to play. If you look at a financial planner, his role is to facilitate the process of assisting clients to identify and achieve their lifestyle goals as well as financial objectives. The Financial Planning Institute defines a professional financial planner as a trusted advisor who works with clients to review all options available to him to be able to put him in a better position to make a more informed decision. Clients who use financial planners generally have a greater opportunity of achieving both their lifestyle goals as well as financial objectives, Shafiq. Few reasons why I believe a financial plan is very important. Number one, I'd say it aids you in maintaining the value and purchasing power of your capital, as Hassan mentioned earlier. It helps you achieve an acceptable level of investment return relative to the risk that you're taking to achieve that return. It gets you on your way to achieve financial independence at retirement, which everybody strives to achieve in your golden years. And then lastly, it affords you the opportunity to establish regular and clear defined review of your financial plan with the financial planner, Shafiq.
Sure. I think just to add to that, Shafiq, we are obviously living in a country as in many countries in the world, where there's obviously certain rules and regulations related to investments, related to taxation. There's many of those rules in place. To ensure that obviously that we're complying with the rules and regulations of the land, we need to make sure that we understand the rules and regulations of the land. And sometimes, as you know, as highlighted, it's important to speak to the qualified experts, be it the qualified financial planners, taxation experts, who can obviously guide the individual in making sure, firstly, do you understand all the rules and regulations that impact you in terms of your income, in terms of your investments? There are many rules and regulations which you need to be aware of. Be it from your salary that you earn to the dividends or income that you receive from your investments, to your property income that you may receive, and also in many cases also when there's a death that takes place. Those matters are also important because it impacts in terms of the estate, and all those issues are impacted by the rules and regulations related to tax and distributions and the like. So speaking to very importantly, qualified people in terms of financial planning, financial advice, and taxation matters, speaking to taxes, it is important. It has a very, very significant impact in terms of making sure that your financial matters is in order so that you benefit, your family benefit, and that your wealth over time is protected for the future generations as well.
Now, Hassan, we've embraced all the general principles in detail, but how critical is the actual choice of your actual investment manager?
That is vitally important. You've had cases over the years as well where people, as we talked about, don't place their money with individuals who are not qualified, who come up with these certain types of schemes and the like, and therefore with the result, many people, and you've had widows, you've had pensioners have lost their savings. Now, placing your manager with a qualified manager who's got a track record, very importantly, a track record, and the philosophy which embodies wealth creation and protection for your wealth over a period of time. Very important. Now, for example, ourselves, we've got now alhamdulillah, a 19-year track record in terms of managing money. We are regulated, very importantly regulated, by the respective authorities in South Africa, by the Financial Services Board. So you're investing in products that are regulated, that are transparent, and that have a track record. Your manager's got a track record in terms of managing money. And very importantly, what is the philosophy of that manager, the investment philosophy? Is it to protect and grow your real wealth? And that, as we started off, we talked about inflation as being one of the key aspects and key risks. You want to make sure that your manager who you're entrusting your money with, does he or she have that track record in terms of making sure that they can protect and grow my real wealth for me and my family over the long term?
Hassan and Mansoor, shukran, thank you.
Thank you very much, Shafiq.
And that concludes today's edition of our special Ramadan series of the Oasis Focus on Finance show. Today we discussed the impact of education in empowering yourself on your road to financial freedom. Special thanks to our guests Hassan Motala and Mansoor Mia. Should you wish to watch this or any of our other shows, you can log on to the Oasis Crescent YouTube channel. Or if you would like to call us, 0860 100 786 or email info@oasiscrescent.com. Until next time, I'm your host Shafiq Morten. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.